Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Now, I thought I'd do a video covering how important it is to break down beliefs and why belief work is so important for recovery. So, when you come into one-to-ones, what you'll find is that we'll take a specialised look into the beliefs holding you back and the perspectives holding you back and the perspectives and the internal framework that OCD is flourishing upon. And the reason why OCD is latching to certain fears and certain scenarios and why you're having these very intrusive thoughts is because of the beliefs at play. It's because of the fears that you're holding, how you catastrophize in the worst case scenario and so on. Because it's not just a blanket approach. It's not just, yeah, everyone dispute this fear and that's it. Because obviously different fears at play, different triggers, and different life scenarios, different events, and different ways of OCD latching, all the nuances, all the intricacies of OCD. So it takes a specialised, tailored approach of how OCD is latching for you and how it's operating and what's keeping you stuck and why you're not making any progress. So what you'll find, and what we tend to do is, we'll look at the irrational beliefs. So we'll look at the core fears at play, and how we do that is, okay, well, what are you scared of? So when you're triggered, let's look at a big trigger. Let's say why you're stuck, okay? And I'll ask you, well, what does it boil down to? If you look at, yes, I know that triggers you, but what does it boil down to? What is the underlying fear that it always links back to? Yes, fear of rejection. Fear of never getting better. Fear of going to jail. Fear of doing something wrong. Fear of not knowing my sexuality. Fear of not knowing, okay? So it always tends to link back to the underlying bubbling fear that's fueling it all, okay? Now, what I'll ask is, let's look at the irrational beliefs you're holding here. Let's look at the unhealthy beliefs you're holding, which is fueling the unhealthy negative feelings of anxiety, guilt, shame, depression, self-pity, dread, impending doom, that fearful feeling, okay? So what I'll ask is, let's look for the demands at play here. So what kind of musts are you saying? Shoulds, absolute shoulds, needs, got tos, have tos, oughts. Very demanding, black and white, all or nothing way of thinking. How are you holding that? So that's the first thing I'll take a look at. Okay? And then we'll move on to the awfulizing, catastrophizing. There's no specific approach, there's no order of this. It just, let's look at the irrational beliefs holding you back around the core fear, and then we go on to breaking that down. And I think it's quite a structured approach, and I find it helpful myself, and I find it helpful when I'm speaking to others as well. So you can really see, yes, these beliefs are holding me back. Yes, this is how we tackle them. Yes, this is the main core fear. This is how we tackle them. This is how we shift perspectives and so on. So I look for the awfulizing and the internal catastrophizing. Okay, so saying it's awful, it's catastrophic, it's terrible, it's horrible if this happens, looking at the worst case scenario, just completely catastrophizing it, and going from that 0 to 100, jumping to that irrational conclusion within a matter of seconds, just a complete catastrophe. It's a disaster, it's a shambles, that complete 0 to 100 extreme reaction. So we'll look how that's happening internally in the brain and the framework that you're holding. Okay, now a big one that we tend to look for, and I really highlight this in calls, is low frustration tolerance, because this isn't just beliefs, this is just all aspects of life. Our habits, our lifestyle structure, just everyday, daily things, daily activities that we do, the procrastination, the putting things off, the avoidance, the compulsions, the addictive behaviours, just that low frustration tolerance. And saying things, I can't stand it, I can't bear it, I just cannot cope, those kind of, that way of speaking, that language, that mindset. Just because if you say, I just can't stand that, it's the worst thing ever, totally unbearable, there's no coming back from that, it's past the point of any return, then you're giving yourself a mountain to climb. Let's be honest, you're giving yourself a mountain to climb, because even if you're very, very scared of a fear, even when OCD is really latched on firmly with a fear and a worst case scenario, if you're just saying, I can't stand it, the worst thing ever, totally terrible, my life's over, then of course that's going to fuel the feelings of anxiety, guilt, shame, and so on. Okay, so we'll look for low frustration tolerance, and we'll look for things how we can build the frustration tolerance, because a high frustration tolerance is very, very important with OCD and leaning into discomfort with any life problem, any adversity, any problem that we face. Building a frustration tolerance is very, very important, because life throws hassles our way. Life involves problems. Life involves difficulties and challenges. So when we get very good and robust at dealing with problems and overcoming obstacles and overcoming hurdles, and that also helps with OCD as well. Because let's be honest here, OCD, suffering from OCD is very frustrating. It's very uncomfortable. It's annoying. We know that. But if the frustration tolerance was on the floor, which it was for me, I had a very, very low frustration tolerance. I was very irritable. I was very sort of quite snappy towards others, quite rude, quite short with others. Not in an intentionally way, it was just because I felt so crap. And I was like, oh no, I can't be bothered to do this. Anything that took effort, anything that took discipline, anything that required thinking or required a long-term thinking, anything that wasn't instant gratification, I struggled with because I was already suffering, already felt on edge. I thought, no, I can't take it anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's terrible. It's terrible. And then I just said, I can't stand it. I can't bear it. And that's what led to the very low frustration tolerance. So building frustration tolerance is very, very important in the recovery journey because, like I just said, when you get used to overcoming problems, it's not just overcoming OCD, it's any problem in life, and that involves a high frustration tolerance. That involves leaning into discomfort, feeling unwanted feelings and letting it be there and not trying to get rid of it all the time, and certainly not describing it as I can't stand it, unbearable and so on. Okay, important point. Another big one, another irrational belief that people hold, the self-downing, the other downing, and the life downing. Okay, which links into later on and what we'll speak about in our calls is self-acceptance, life acceptance, and other acceptance. Three main unconditional acceptance of how we overcome all life problems and how we bring down the catastrophic reaction towards people and downing yourselves, downing life, damning other people, saying they're written off, it's terrible, life's over, life's finished, life's not worthwhile, that kind of thing, okay? So let's look for how you're self-downing. So how are you saying you're bad, you're worthless? Also, I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'm undeserving, that's a big one. I'm undeserving of any joy, I'm undeserving of any happiness, I'm undeserving of everything. That was a big one for my guilt-related themes because I said, well, if I've done this, then I'm undeserving. I can't enjoy anything. I can't ever have peace. I can't ever feel relaxed. I felt undeserving. So I had to really break down the universal deservingness law that we invent in our heads. And we'll get into all of this in one-to-one calls. This is why it's so important because it's not just, oh yeah, this is my rational beliefs and now I'm sorted. No, we need to really, really chip away at them. Yes, you have to do yourself. One-to-one calls are very important because specialized coaching calls, because we can break it down together and just get insights and different ways into viewing our specific fears, okay, which is very, very important. So self-downing, so I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'm deserving. Other downing, so that's a big one. If you're with rage and anger, or you're constantly downing people, or you're getting quite angry with other people. Jealousy, that can be a big one as well. Over jealousy, so saying things like they're bad, they're worthless, they're no good, they're rotten, they're evil, they're horrible, and writing them off or downing them because of the beliefs at play, saying if they've done this, they're totally terrible, they're no good. And then as we can start applying acceptance, compassion, understanding, empathy for others, we can then start applying that inwardly to ourselves with unconditional self-acceptance and unconditional other acceptance as well. Because unconditional other acceptance is huge for bringing down anger, bringing down rage. Not saying you disagree with everyone, no, you're not just being walked all over by everyone, no. If you disagree with someone, yes, that you can stand your ground. Of course, you can be firm, but it's when you have the belief that, well, I need to get my point across. They're bad, they're no good, they must not think that. It's terrible that they think that. They're a terrible person for thinking that. And that is why the anger is fueled. That's why the revengefulness is fueled, and the vengefulness and the rage and the outrage. That's how that's fueled because of the beliefs that you hold. Okay, so it's very, very important to cover. And life downing, saying life isn't worthwhile, life is meaningless, what's the point of carrying on, nothing else matters, life's shit, life's crap, life's terrible, life's the worst thing ever, no point in even carrying on. So all the things that I was telling myself when I was consumed in the OCD cycle, saying, well, life's completely meaningless. At my worst, you could have given me anything externally, you could have gave me a huge gift, you could have given me everything that I wanted, because I was so caught up in my own mind, I was so stuck in the past and chronic guilt and anxiety and intrusive thoughts, bombarded by intrusive thoughts. I was just downing life. I wasn't just saying this is a difficult part of my life. I was saying, well, because I'm suffering, my whole life is shit. It's like saying, well, because this thing's happened to me in my life, because I've now lost my job, my whole life is shit. Well, hang on. No, you just lost your job. So the income's affected, the career's affected, But what about all the other things in your life? You're rating your whole life based on one thing. It doesn't make much sense, but that's what we do. That's what we naturally tend to do. So when we start chipping away at that, we're applying more life acceptance. So accepting life and all its challenges and all its adversities and all its different conditions and circumstances, and not just downing the whole of life based on one thing. And that's so important. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll show you how we're thinking and how we're acting, how we're feeling, okay, because they all intertwine, they all come hand in hand. So, and I want to really highlight this, because if you look at your fear, okay, look at your underlying bubbling fear that always links back to, okay. Now, if I put 1,000 people in the same room and I said, here's your fear, and everyone has the fear, there would not be 1,000 same reactions. There might be similar reactions, but it wouldn't be the same. Some people wouldn't give a shit. Some people would be very unhealthy way of feeling, sort of depression, anxiety, guilt, rage, hurt, embarrassed, shameful, that kind of feeling. Some people would probably be healthily concerned and frustrated and disappointed and have regret, have remorse, have sorrow, sort of concern for relationship, for career, but not the extreme, catastrophic, negative feeling of anxiety, depression, guilt, and so on, all the ones I've just covered. Okay, now what I'm saying there is that, let's say you had a fear of doing wrong, and that would mean that if you do wrong, you automatically feel anxious, you automatically feel guilty. Well, that's not the case, because your beliefs is fueling that feeling. And because people not everyone will have the same reaction, is because their beliefs are different. They view doing wrong as a lot different to you. And if they take all the different factors involved, the environmental factors, the genetic factors, the upbringing, and the experiences, and the cultures, the religions, the political backgrounds. There's so many factors, so many. You know, the list is never ending, okay? And this is why it's not an automatic response. It's not, oh, if I go to jail, then I automatically feel depressed. Well, hang on. If I do wrong, then I automatically feel guilty. Well, hang on, because if someone's done the same thing as you, they might not feel guilty at all. They might just feel healthily regret, or some people might not even give a shit. Okay, so what I'm saying is it's not an automatic reaction, and this is why beliefs are so important, okay, because all the different factors at play, which is fueling how you feel, or fueling how the belief around the fear is, and then because your beliefs are very irrational, because your beliefs are currently very unhealthy, that is what's fueling the unhealthy negative feelings. Okay, very important to remember, and I like using that analogy because you realise that, oh yes, that would mean the whole world would feel like how I do if this thing happened. And that's why you feel like the treatment-resistant case. That's why you feel like the exception, because you're going to say, yeah, but it's only me that's done this. It's only me that's having these thoughts. It's only me that's done this, that's had this theme. No, it's your belief around the fear that's fueling the feeling. Okay, important to remember. Important to hold yourself accountable for that. Yes, obviously OCD is involved. Of course, OCD is exaggerating that. Of course it is. But it's still down to us and how we view stuff, because I have OCD, but it's completely harmless to me right now, or has been for years, because I'm recovered, and because the beliefs and the internal framework isn't there for it to flourish. I'm not catastrophizing. I'm not awfulizing. I'm not demanding. I haven't got the all or nothing black and white thinking. my frustration tolerance is very high. I have I have unconditional self-acceptance, life acceptance, and other acceptance. There's no catastrophizing the worst case scenario. Hence why OCD has no power. Hence why OCD has no grip in my life, where it was clenched like an internal vice for years and years. I couldn't be let off the hook, never. As soon as I did a healthy distraction, it was like, nope, you've done this, don't deserve no joy, no, rubbish. And that's how it felt. Anything that I tried to do, it was like pulling me back, like that boulder weighing me down. It felt like a burden weighing me down all the time. No matter what I've done, no matter what I've achieved, no matter who loves me, no matter who cares for me, it was like, it does not matter because this thing in the past. It does not matter because these thoughts. And that's what it was saying, and that's why it was so grip tight. That only started to unlatch and release once I started to chip away at these beliefs. Okay? I don't want to go on too long, but I'm going to talk about how, so we think, we feel, and we act. So how do we act? Now, if we have beliefs around a fear, that is then we engage with compulsions, with avoidance, addictive, unhealthy behaviours, procrastination. Because if you're saying, I'm no good, I'm terrible, this is awful, I'm wasted time, I'm undeserving, that's going to lead to procrastination because of how you feel, the depression, the anxiety, and so on. The avoidance, because you're saying, well, if that happens, I'm a terrible, awful person. So you then avoid anything to do with your fear. And the compulsions, so the seeking reassurance, the confessing, the venting, the Googling, the whining and the complaining, the playing the victim, and the self-reassurance, so that internal dialogue, talking to yourself, trying to find an answer, that mental rumination, compulsion, yes, that's automatic, but some of it isn't. Some of it's you engage with. Some of it is you trying to get an answer, you trying to find that imaginary key to the imaginary lock of, especially real event false memory. If I just work this out, I can get peace. If I just work this out, then that will give me long-term freedom. No, that is a trap. Long-term freedom, it comes from when we make peace with the worst case scenario and accept ourselves unconditionally. Okay, so important. So that's the first thing I would cover in the one-to-one calls. Once read the first book, that's huge. Okay, because all what I'm saying now, you're gonna think, what the hell is this guy talking about? So you read our first book on the reading list, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes Anything, and that gets the ball rolling. That gets the cogs turning towards recovery. That even if it's just baby steps, that gets the progress going. That gets that ball rolling, because you suddenly go, how is my thinking playing a part in how I feel? How can rational thinking help me? How can unconditional acceptance help me? How can viewing my fears and changing my perspectives help me with my mental and emotional health? Oh yes, I'm not catastrophizing that anymore. Oh yes, I'm not using that kind of way of thinking. Oh yes, I'm not avoiding this. I'm not doing this compulsion. Okay, so the first book is huge. Very, very important. Hence why it's the first book on the reading list. Because it, like I said, it gets the ball rolling. It sets the founding blocks. It builds the momentum towards changing beliefs for long-term freedom. Okay, so it's very important to remember that. Now, if you are having difficulty trying to identify your core fears or your rational beliefs or your unhealthy beliefs and all the compulsions that you're doing, and I'm feeling guilty, Sam. I'm just feeling guilty. I don't know why I'm feeling guilty. It's annoying me now, or it's very frustrating me. I've been feeling guilty for years and years and years. Why isn't it budging? And that is why getting in touch with one-to-ones is very important, because, excuse me, because we'll see, well, yes, because you're holding that belief, because you're catastrophizing that. Yes, but look how you're writing yourself off. Yeah, but look how you're then viewing yourself as the worst case was true. How you're saying, well, that must not happen. I need approval. Rejection just must not happen to me. I should always, my life should always be nice and easy. People should always treat me fairly. Well, that is why it's fueling those beliefs. And that's what's fueling how you feel. Okay, so we'll have a look at that and we'll break that down. And the important things of one-to-ones and why they're so important is because it's your specific fears. It's not like, okay, you've had a one-to-one, yeah, have this piece of paper, go away and do it yourself. No, we'll have a conversation talking about how you are still stuck and talking about how OCD is operating in your mind and why and how you're fueling that cycle with your beliefs, with your behaviors, so your compulsions, your life structure, your routines, and your unhealthy behaviors, and the avoidance and so on. And we'll also take a big look at the perspectives and where you're going wrong with the catastrophic thinking. Okay, so if you're interested in our one-to-one services, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. When I shut up, you will see a message, a number, WhatsApp number, where you can get in touch. And you get in touch with one of the coaches here, and we can book you in as soon as we can. Because OCD, look, the thing with this, we can all wait and wait and wait. You know, I did personally. I waited and waited and waited. I waited until crisis, and then I ran in to get help. And then all of a sudden, I feel okay for a day, and I wait till the crisis again. Look, OCD doesn't just budge on its own. I don't know anyone who's just recovered from OCD by just doing it on their own. Very realistic review. No, I haven't seen that. Okay, so it's important to have that guide taking you through step by step, all the ups and downs, all the intricacies, all the parts of OCD that people don't quite understand, how it's operating here, how subtle it can be. It can be very, very subtle. Sometimes it's even hard to know what you're scared of. Okay, and we're here to look through that and take that with you and walk the journey with you step by step. So yeah, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com and we'll speak soon. You take care. Bye-bye.